I want to thank Dr. Pachori for an excellent presentation tonight, laying bare some of the important statistics that we're going to need and the perspectives we're going to need in taking this forward, and to our distinguished panel of speakers for being here, for sharing their knowledge and wisdom, and to everyone in this room for coming together and inspiring the media to get this story out. It was Professor Watson that I think quite rightly said that meat is not only a diet issue, it's also an environmental issue. I think that's a key point. I think given that we have 60 billion farm animals reared and slaughtered in this world of ours every year, the majority of them now in intensive industrial forms of agriculture, in factory farms, we can see that quite frankly, industrial farming is the biggest issue of animal cruelty on the planet. I think whilst we're at the end of this evening, we are at the beginning of a very important conversation. A conversation about how to create a new food system that navigates the tidal waves of challenge that are inevitably going to face upon our global community. By 2050, the world is likely to be a very different place. We've heard about some of those changes this evening. Instead of 6 billion people, likely to be 9 billion people. We need to ensure that those people have ready access to affordable, nutritious food. Henning has told us about the likely second livestock explosion, from 60 billion farm animals to 120 billion farm animals by 2050. We've heard some of the evidence of the likely devastating impact of climate change. Henning also told us that the livestock population already contributes 18% gas emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. Now there's been some talk of the likely mitigation that could be brought about, but I think if we see that if we don't do something now, there is likely to be a doubling of that livestock industry, which already accounts for the use of a third of all of the land on the planet. I think the conclusions are clear. And this takes place within a backdrop of sea level rises. I think the fact is that the sea will rise and land will consequently disappear. The other factor, we talked about the oil price tonight. We didn't talk so much about peak oil and the fact that sometime soon, if we haven't already, we will reach peak of oil production and it will then tail off inevitably ever more. And with it will go the cheap, essential ingredient of industrial agriculture. Oil will become more expensive and more scarce. We heard from Dr. Powles that the Western world is eating too much meat for our own health and that of the planet, and that rich countries need to decrease our meat consumption by more than half if we're to meet the convergence of the upward surge in meat demand in developing nations. Often when I'm talking about factory farming and people say, well, what's the root of the problem? I put it that the root of the problem is too many animals in too small a space. That is the essence of the animal welfare problems, often the public health problems, and the environmental problems too. By 2050, unless we take urgent action, we could be looking at a future where we have too many animals on too small a planet. We need to chart a better future. 2050 is not that far away, especially when we think that it takes, in my view, a generation at least to change the attitude of a nation and a region about its food. We don't have many more years than 30. We probably have 10 more good years to find the imagination, to find the real solution to the problems that the world will face. we need to find a way to not only satisfy the needs of more people, but we need to make sure that it is done in a humane and sustainable way. And that's not going to be done through a polarized debate. That can only be done, in my view, by all sectors of society and all nations truly working together. We talked about the need for individuals to consider what they eat. That meat is not only a dietary issue, but also an environmental issue. Again, to repeat that phrase. But yes, whilst we should consider as individuals our diet, I think much, much more needs to be done. From my standpoint, from a Compassion in World Farming standpoint, we should consider seriously an international treaty that sets targets for the reduction of meat production globally, in a balanced way which serves all needs. It is up to all of us, I believe, to work together to bring hope to what does seem like a hopeless scenario. We can no longer just call for a new vision. And this is as much aimed at my organisation as the wider society. We need to work together. Policymakers, farming industry, the food industry, consumer society, to create that vision. We need to have the imagination, the determination to ensure that food and farming and farm animals thrive, not simply survive, come 2050. Thank you all very much for being part of that solution tonight.